Contract extension news coming. Stay tuned. I'll give it to you in about 3 minutes. Good morning. This from Jalen to kick off the show. Kevin, might be time to start talking about Brian Robinson Jr. as a player on the bubble. Did you see what Quinn said this morning about Bill, the 7th rounder? Yeah, Bill is the nickname for the running back of the Washington football franchise that was selected in the 7th round. That would be Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, a.k.a. Bill Krosky Merritt. Quinn said, quote, "It's the violence of his cuts that he can get his shoulders square and get downhill fast," closed quote. I think that when you learn something this time of year, it's not from watching anything, but it is from coaches and assistant coaches and coordinators and players talking about players and maybe schemes. You don't get a lot on that. So that is a very positive, sentiment from the head coach about Bill Krosky Merritt. He looks good on tape from New Mexico. Only played one game at Arizona last year. I've mentioned this many times before, and I know it's repetitive, but in the last 10 years, there's just been one running back selected after the 6th round, that would be the 7th round, that's made a contribution on an NFL roster. Just one, and that's Isaiah Pacheco in Kansas City. J.J. Watt, Hall of Famer, tweeted out yesterday, "Training camp stats are insane and ridiculous. I used to think it was always just people joking, but now seeing them seriously reported, you have no idea what the purpose of that period is, what the goals are, what the context is, etc. It could be a strictly 3rd and long blitz period where every play is skewed to the defense's advantage. Coaches could be asking the quarterback to focus specifically on one route concept. D-line may be focusing only on bull rushes one day and just speed rushes for one period. More importantly, practicing is for practicing. You're supposed to fail. You're supposed to try new things, see what works and what doesn't work, etc. If you only do what works, you'll never grow, adapt, change. The entire point of training camp is to build and grow towards the season so that you perform your best when the real games start." Look, what Dan Quinn threw out about Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt was not a training camp stat. You know, when you see people tweeting out, "Oh, the ball never hit the ground, the quarterback was 8 for 8," or "Oh my God, 2 touchdown catches for, the undrafted wide receiver during, the 11 on 11. Yeah, that stuff is insane and ridiculous to, even it's embarrassing if you tweet that out as if that means something. Because as J.J. Watt lays out, we have no idea what the context or what they've decided to work on for that period. But I do like to pay attention to what the coaches say. And I think with Dan Quinn, the one thing we have learned over these 18 months, his answers are long. They sometimes reveal something, oftentimes do not. But when they do, specifically hone in on like one player that stands out to him and he wasn't asked about, and that's not the situation, I don't think, with Krosky Merritt this morning. Sometimes he is trying to tell us something. I think that, you can certainly read between the lines at times with Quinn. Would be thrilled if Krosky Merritt ends up being Jalen, a guy that puts Brian Robinson Jr. on the roster bubble. But I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think if they had drafted a running back in the 2nd or 3rd round, in the first 2 days of the draft, the first 2 nights of the draft, I would have immediately said, boy, they are looking for a replacement. They are definitely looking to replace Brian Robinson Jr., depending on the style of the back that they would have drafted. But waiting until the 7th round to draft one, not that you can't find running backs late in the draft. Of course, we've seen many 4th, 5th, 6th round backs, Alfred Morris, be really, really good at the NFL level. Just not many 7th rounders. But if the intention of their drafting back in late April and early May had been to go after a back early, we would have been able to read between the lines that they're looking to replace Brian Robinson Jr. I don't think anything they did in the offseason indicates that. So I doubt over the next month to 6 weeks that Krosky Merritt could, show enough to make Brian Robinson Jr. expendable. Now, would I be shocked? No. It would be more about what Brian Robinson Jr. has been. Not available enough, not consistent enough. I still think he's a decent back, but it would take at least the thought that we've got the replacement on the roster. We found the needle in the haystack with our 7th round pick. We'll see. I hope you're right, Jalen. I would not bet on it. I would bet that Brian Robinson Jr. lines up as the starting running back on Sunday, September 7th against the Giants. That would be my guess. It is a position, though. It is a position, running back, in which players that are rookies can step in week 1 and produce. It is the position more than any other, really, on a football roster where the younger you are, the less it matters. You can step in and play right away if you are talented enough. There are pass blocking responsibilities. There are, understanding the offense, understanding the checks. But for a lot of it, it's just taking the ball, using your vision, using your insane cut ability, and being able to run forward with it. Thank you, Jalen, for that. This from Ben. Ben writes, loved the conversation yesterday about the best moments of 2024. I think you missed out on a game, as did everybody else. I think the Pittsburgh game was the most exciting game of the year, and they should have won it if the ball had been spotted correctly. Yeah, it was a very exciting game. There's no doubt. It was not in contention, for me anyway, for the most memorable game. It was memorable. I mean, there was a lot to that game that was memorable. Washington basically blowing a lead, something that they really didn't do. They had a 10-point lead in the second half. And that throw, against Benjamin St-Juste, the throw from Russell Wilson to Mike Williams with just over 2 minutes to go to give Pittsburgh the lead was, maybe Russell Wilson's highlight last year. Mike Williams' one highlight, in Pittsburgh last year. I mean, what a long time, exceptional receiver Mike Williams has been. And that was a great throw, great catch. And, here comes Washington down the field just needing 3 with 2 minutes to go. And it was really the only time that they didn't deliver, in a situation where they could win the game. And I say they, Jaden Daniels, they got him out there to right around midfield at the 2-minute warning on a throw to Noah Brown. And then they had the 3rd and 9. He missed Noah Brown. 4th and 9 throws to Ertz. I thought it was a bad spot. I think a lot of people thought it was a bad spot. The replay official reviewed it and kept the ball short of the line to gain. Pittsburgh took over. And by the way, remember, Washington still had timeouts left. They could have gotten the ball back, but they couldn't stop Pittsburgh. It was Najee Harris and I think it was Cordell Patterson who ended up having a big run for a first down. And then it was the big offsides. Remember Johnny Newton's offsides on 4th and 1 at midfield. That was a huge, huge play late in that game. Washington hoping to get the ball back. Pittsburgh just trying to draw offsides, and Johnny Newton was drawn offsides. That was a really good football game. Ben, you're right. That was an exciting football game. And it was, the week leading into the Thursday night game in Philly. And that was a knockdown, drag-out, 3-hour, 15-minute, down-to-the-wire football game in a really good environment. A lot of Pittsburgh fans, a lot of Washington fans. It wasn't Jaden's cleanest game by far, but it was exciting for sure. I would not put it anywhere near the top moments, but it was a memorable game, that's for sure. And they had a couple of memorable losses. For all of the discussion about the season and how lucky they were during the course of the season in so many games. Let's face it, they were in that Baltimore game, certainly could have won the Pittsburgh game, and definitely could have won the first Dallas game had, the extra point after the bomb to Terry, been converted. But Seibert missed that extra point. He missed 2 extra points in the game, and Washington lost 34-26, giving up 2 kickoff returns in the final few minutes of the game. It's still pretty amazing. One off, obviously, an onside kick. So there were a couple of games that they lost that they could have won. I don't look at the Philly game at Philly as a game they could have or should have, but they took a lead, if you recall, into the fourth quarter. They were up 10-6 heading into the fourth quarter of that game. So, those 3 losses in a row, Pittsburgh, Philly, and Dallas, were all games that, none of them were one-sided. Washington had chances in all 3 of them. Pittsburgh for sure. Dallas with an extra point. I think they were outplayed in Philadelphia, regardless of their, taking a 10-6 lead into the fourth quarter. Philly missed a couple of field goals early. They had a couple of big, blunders as they were moving the football. Yeah. And I think the Baltimore game, which was, remember, that was the first real test. It's like, okay, you're 4-2. What were we 4-1 at that point? 4-1, just the Tampa loss. And it was a competitive football game. Man, the Jaden touchdown pass to Terry in that short part of the end zone on, I think it was a 3rd and goal or something. God, that was a great play. But a lot of feedback to that segment that we did yesterday, a couple of segments that we did, and all the calls. Looking back on 2024, it was a hell of a season. It was such a memorable season. For me, still, Detroit's the top moment, the playoff win at Detroit. And if I were to give a top 3, I think number 2 would be Tampa in the playoffs, and number 3 would be Philly late in the season. 5 touchdown passes, overcoming 5 turnovers to beat the Eagles. Although the Cincinnati game early in the season is really close. Very close. All right, there is contract extension news. It has nothing to do with Terry McLaurin. Washington agreed. I saw Nikki tweet this out earlier this morning. The Washington extended Percy Butler to a 1-year contract extension. He was under contract for this season and then due to be a free agent next year. They signed him to a 1-year contract extension. I've not seen any of the terms, but Percy Butler has been a very good special teamer for this team. And I think they believe he's pretty good at safety. So we'll see how that plays out in terms of their safety situation, because, you do have, a big sub at safety going away from Jeremy Chin and going for half the cost Will Harris, who will play, side by side with Quan Martin. But Percy Butler is going to get time, no doubt, as will, I think, Tyler Owens, number 40. I think they really like him. I think they really liked him last year as well. All right. So yesterday we had the stadium news. And to me, I thought, okay, it's over. Next Friday, as in a week from today, the city council is going to vote. They're going to get the votes. They have the votes. And then we're going to have, shovel in ground by late this year or early next year. And over the next couple of months, we're going to get the plans. We're going to see what the stadium's going to look like, because all the other, photos that have been out there, those are just mock-ups or fan mock-ups. That's not the actual architectural, rendition, whatever the word is, for what the stadium will look like. I can't wait to see what that stuff looks like. That will be interesting for sure. But apparently there are 2 votes required. Eric Flack from WUSA Channel 9 is going to jump on with me in about 4 minutes. And he's going to explain this. Not only are 2 votes required, it's not simple majority. Apparently, it's something more than that. Maybe 2/3 vote required. I thought it was a slam dunk that next Friday it was over. I still think it's a slam dunk that eventually it will be over, but it's a little bit more complicated than what we thought yesterday. Eric Flack from WUSA, Channel 9, will jump on with me next. You'll hear my conversation, Maryland basketball fans, with Buzz Williams. First time we've had Buzz on the show. It's really the first time Buzz has done any significant local media, and had a really nice conversation with him yesterday. You'll hear that during the 11 a.m. hour. And Ben Standig from training camp at 12. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we're going to discuss what would the team be without Terry McLaurin in 2025. He's going to play. He's under contract. He's not holding out, and they're not going to trade him. And by the way, those of you who think that they just should trade him for Micah Parsons, first of all, Dallas isn't trading Micah Parsons within the division. Secondly, that's not a straight-up trade. Washington would have to include more than Terry, perhaps a lot more than Terry, to get Micah Parsons. Wouldn't be a bad swap, though. I would take that swap in a heartbeat for sure. But start thinking about what does Terry mean in terms of games? Is it the difference between 12 wins and 9 wins? Is it the difference between 11 wins and 6 wins? You tell me what you think his value is if he's not on the field, how that disrupts the 2025 season. I'll tell you what I think in about 15 minutes, and we'll take calls on that afterwards. Joining me right now is my friend Eric Flack from WUSA TV Channel 9, Murrow and Emmy Award-winning chief investigative reporter for Channel 9. So simply put, Eric, yesterday seemed like, okay, Chairman Mendelson, we're going to have a vote on August 1st. We got, as in the city council, and man, he got chesty, didn't he, about the much better deal that the city council, was able to extract from the team, and good for them. And it seemed like to me yesterday that a week from today, August 1st, there would be 7 or more votes, and we'd be breaking ground at some point by the end of the year or the first part of next year. But I started reading last night, and it looked to me like more than one vote was required, and maybe not simple majority. Can you explain to all of us, please?
In D.C., you need 2 separate votes to pass a law or an act, and that's essentially what this is, because it's authorizing the use of huge amounts of taxpayer money. So they have what's called a first vote and a second vote. Under normal circumstances, they are very similar procedures, but this process has been anything but normal. The first vote will happen on Friday, a week from today. Typically, you would need a simple majority to pass a law, so that with 7 members of DC Council right now, because Trayon White, because of his bribery charges, has been expelled off the council. We'll pick that up in a second. But as of next Friday, there are going to be 12 members sitting up there. And typically you would need a simple majority. So you would need 7. Because of the tax implications of this particular deal and some city laws as it relates to tax abatements being suspended as part of the way this deal is structured, they need 2/3 to pass this through the DC Council. So instead of 7, they will need 8 next Friday. Right now they have 5 votes. So they will need 3 of the undecided to come on over and join them. They will then move on to a second vote in September, mid-September. Typically, that would just be a repeat of the first vote. Trayon White will have been sworn back into the DC Council, and we will now have 13 members of the DC Council sitting up there, and the 2/3 majority will move to 9.
Right.
So
yeah, you then need 9.
They will need 9. And Trayon has, been an enigma in many ways. He has signaled support for a DC stadium in his very limited comments on this issue. But this is a multi-step process, and it is not a simple majority.
Okay. So that, to me, is new, because I don't think that's the way it was presented yesterday. I didn't get into the weeds, into the, deep detail. I just assumed when Chairman Mendelson, put out that tweet and held a press conference and said, we got the deal. We got a much better deal than the mayor got. we know how to negotiate. We got a much better, revenue upside for the city. And next Friday, we're going to vote and we're going to pass this thing. But that's not what it is. And 2 votes, by the way, with the second vote taking place when, Eric? In September?
Mid-September.
Mid-September. Okay, so how does that affect the timeline that the team wanted?
That's a great question, and one I'm trying to find out the answer to as we speak. It's one of the things I am working on today. They were pretty clear that extending this process into September would be problematic for their timeline. On the other hand, Phil Mendelssohn worked closely and negotiated this deal, exclusively by himself with the team, although he was working on behalf of the contingent of 5, Pinto, McDuffie, Wendell Felder, Anita Bonds, all of the others, yes, votes on this stadium. So when you say DC Council reached a deal with the Commanders on an amended agreement, 5 members of DC Council reached an amended agreement. You have to think and hope that the Commanders are okay with this timeline, and here's why. Although I think there are, legislative reasons, separating the first and second vote, meaning I don't think they can have the first vote next Friday and have the second vote the following Friday.
Why not?
I honestly, Kevin, I'm going to admit what I don't know.
Okay.
This is like some inside laws. I believe there is like procedural things where it has to be separated by a certain amount of days. I believe
it's not because they're on recess.
I do not believe that is the case, but I'm going to have to admit to, don't quote me on that part. But when we pressed Mendelssohn on why now, you said you were going to slow roll this thing. You said you weren't going to be beholden to anybody's timeline. And now all of a sudden you are out of seemingly nowhere saying you struck a deal. Was it the Trump threat? Was it the Comer threat? What was it? He acknowledged it was threats, not threats, but pressure from the team and talking to the team. And I think being convinced that time truly was of the essence and that there was an absolute need to get the deal done now. And he said the team sweetened the pot to say, we will do this, but only in return, your give back is you do this right now. And so that's what he said he did. He said he took the money and said, but in return, I had to say, we'll do it right now. So
yeah, but it sounds like they're not doing it right now. If there's 2 votes required and the second one isn't until mid-September.
As right now as DC Council gets, I should say. So in the context of all that, I believe that hopefully, and again, I'm trying to confirm this, at some point, the Commanders decided that this works. It is possible that this is literally the quickest it can get done at this point. The Commanders are just going to have to deal with it. So, I'm trying to, they said, but they said they were right up against the timeline, hopefully that, for those of us who would like to see the stadium open in 2030, because the sooner the stadium opens, the sooner DC gets the money back for the stadium. Hopefully this works within their timeline. But they were a part of this discussion, and they were the ones who said, you can have this deal, but you got to do it now-ish.
Just a thought, and maybe part of this, press conference from yesterday is to maybe influence the public hearings next week, and it's strategic. I don't know, but until it's actually over, maybe they should stop holding all these press conferences because I'll tell you what, going back to, the Ted Youngkin press conference and then the mayor with Goodell and Josh Harris, most people don't follow it closely enough and they just assume it's over. Yesterday really seemed like it was over with, obviously they're still hanging out there what President Trump could do, I guess. Minus that, it really seemed that it's over, and it isn't necessarily over. It's still an odds-on favorite. I get that. But the 8 votes and the 9 votes, the 8 votes Friday, the 9 votes in mid-September. You have, every time I've talked to you about this, you have said, look, I think by the time they get there, they're going to have at least 10 votes, right? So is there any reason to be concerned that they won't have the 2/3 rather than the simple 8 votes next Friday, 9 votes in mid-September?
Couple of things. One, you already hear, I spoke with Robert White kind of as he kind of hustled out of a closed door meeting with council members yesterday morning. He seemed to have grave concerns, but he also seemed to say a stadium was important as long as we're getting the get back. But he has been voicing concerns. Zachary Parker has already been out there saying this is Phil Mendelson's deal. This is not DC Council's deal. He's going to, Janice Lewis-George is kind of a complete wild card. I don't think she's really said much at all. Christina Henderson has been very favorable to this idea, even though she remains in the undecided category. And Matthew Fruman, his biggest problem with the deal is that in his eyes, it's happening way too fast. But I'm not sure that that's a reason to vote against it when push comes to shove. All that to say that I think they have 3 more votes out of those 5 undecideds on Friday. The second piece of this is there are those in Mendelson's camp who, again, going back to this complex tax abatement issue that requires the 2/3 majority,
right,
but thinks it's a question about whether or not it really would require a 2/3 majority. Meaning, is there a wild card where if they're scared they're not going to get the votes, they take some sort of procedural thing to not to argue that it's not subject to this 2/3 vote? Now, this is getting really inside baseball.
Yeah, no, I'm following it, though. There may be something that develops that brings it back to a simple majority.
Correct.
But but the larger point, and most people don't know, even people who live in the city don't know the 13 council members by name or by ward. They know their own ward, council member, but that's it. And they know Mendelson maybe, but we think that there will be 8 and 9 votes, even if 2/3 is required. The timing seems to be the bigger issue. It was presented yesterday as August 1st we're done, but really it's mid-September we're done, and how that timeline, impacts the team. The statement from Mark Klaus, the team president, certainly seemed to embrace, the deal being finalized. I'm wondering if it's just a formality, these 2 votes, next Friday and in mid-September, so much so that the team and the city are moving forward with things like, architectural plan, all the stuff that needs to be happening before they break ground, and maybe it won't impact the timeline. What do you think?
I think that is probably a safe assumption. I think that when you're talking about, listen, our design plans, I think, are well in the works. I think the team is moving down the road with this. I think what they can start doing after the first vote potentially is start getting the regulatory process going. As we talked about with the Donald Trump thing, part of the way Donald Trump had as a means to block this deal is through regulatory avenues that the design plans have to ultimately go through. Right. And that is all a process that cannot begin until design plans are, released and applied for approval. And I
can't apply for them if the city council hasn't actually voted on this deal and that there's actually an actual signed deal in place. Understood. Did you find, Eric, I didn't watch Mendelson's press conference, and I'm assuming you did, but I really thought the press release was a bit combative and a bit chesty. the dynamics, the relationship dynamics between the city council and maybe it's just the chair and the mayor's office. Give me a minute on that. What am I off? I don't follow it very closely.
Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah. I mean, Mendelson. Here's what happened. Mayor Bowser negotiated a deal on her own with the team for a stadium. The second most powerful politician in Washington, D.C. local politics, the chair of the D.C. Council, Phil Mendelson, didn't appreciate that and said many times, we don't know anything about this deal. The mayor negotiated her own deal. Mendelson feels like he got a eye-popping amount of money back for the city and was pretty proud of himself for doing so. Behind the scenes, mayor's office and some of the people associated with it poked holes in just how realistic, how legitimate those numbers are of the money that's actually coming back that wasn't there before or wasn't going to be there. But it's a territorial thing where he was planting his flag on behalf of DC Council saying, look at what we did for the taxpayers. There are now DC Council members, including Zachary Parker, who are frustrated with Mendelson for negotiating his own deal without looping them in. And then you had a mayor who held a press conference you talked about on the steps of the Wilson building with hundreds of people celebrating this as a way to grasp the reins back and grasp credit back and for ultimately bringing this stadium home. You know, I was told that the mayor's office pressured DC Council to act quicker than they ever had before. So it's just everybody just kind of trying to write their own narrative and take their own credit for what many ultimately believe will be at some point Washington Commander Stadium on the old RFK site.
Look, based on what you just said, I can totally understand why the mayor wouldn't have included the cluster, of the city council in the early discussions and negotiations with the team. Nothing would have gotten done. She got it to a point, and we see this all the time. You get it to the point where somebody leads it, you negotiate a term sheet, and then there are opportunities to tweak it. It sounds like that's what he did. I am going to be interested to see, and you're the one that will probably be, involved in the detail, if what he essentially suggested, which was, hundreds of millions of dollars over 30 years in incremental revenue from the first deal, if it's actually true or not. I'm just glad that they're on the verge of getting a deal done. The political bickering back and forth and who gets credit for it. Let me just say this. The mayor will get credit for it. Long term, when that stadium is up, all due respect to Mendelson and the city council, the mayor will get credit for it, just like Sharon Pratt Kelly was crucified for losing the team to Landover. That's the way I see it. Do you see it the same way or not?
1,000%. And she ultimately has always passionately pursued this as her legacy in the history books, and she has said it from day one. I want to bring the football team back to the RFK site, and she is within weeks, possibly, of officially making that happen.
Thank you for clearing all this up. I thought it was interesting because I started reading last night. I'm like, wait a minute, another vote in mid-September? But you heard it, 2 separate votes, August 1st, and then another one in mid-September. And it's very possible that it's not simple majority, but it's 2/3 because of this tax structure, element to the deal. Thank you, Eric, as always.
All right.
At Eric Flack TV on Twitter, on X. Yeah, interesting stuff. It's going to happen, I think. I feel pretty confident it'll happen. It's just happening in a way that I didn't think it was presented yesterday, but that could have been me too. All right, what does Terry really mean to the team? What if they had to play 2025 without him? Quantify it for me. The number of games fewer Or maybe you think it would be the same amount of wins that they would have without him. 301-230-0980. What would life without Terry McLaurin on the roster in 2025 be? What would it look like? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. What would life without Terry McLaurin, what would it look like? Try to quantify it if you can. How many fewer games would the team win in 2025 without him? 301-230-0980. This is clearly a reach hypothetical because there's a 95% chance he's going to play for the team, whether he gets a contract extension or not. There's nothing that makes sense about him holding out or the team trading him. It just doesn't make sense to trade him because you're never going to be able to maximize the return in late July or August with a player that's looking to get paid. That always reduces the compensation when you've got to pay the player after trading for the player. From his standpoint, a holdout makes no sense because he'd be in the same boat a year from now if he doesn't play more than half the games this year. Many players don't get the contract extension they're looking for, and they play out the final year of their deal. T. Higgins did it recently, then got franchise tagged last year. So it happens. I think he will still, even today, hold out day number 3 for Terry McLaurin. I think he's going to get a contract extension. I do. But this is a hypothetical that I'm interested in because I really think it will sort of identify what you guys think Terry really is. There are very few player positions other than quarterback that really do impact wins and losses. A menacing defensive player certainly can. A ridiculous running back like Saquon Barkley obviously had an impact. I'll give you my answer right now, and I won't bury the lead. It's 1 game difference. Tops. 1 game difference. Instead of winning 11 against the schedule they have this year, they'll win 10 and still be a playoff team. Why? Because of the quarterback. It's the quarterback. Always the quarterback. We've seen what guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, we've seen what they can do without a lot of weapons around them. We've seen what Lamar can do without a lot of weapons around him. He had Derrick Henry last year, of course. Jaden Daniels is in that category. He is for me, and he'll elevate everything around him. Luke McCaffrey, certainly Noah Brown. Michael Gallup will end up being, a player of I'm just throwing names out there, but whoever that group is, people will step up and perform because the quarterback is making them better. The quarterback makes the running game better because he's a dual threat, in addition to being a phenomenal in the pocket. I think tops 1 game difference. I think that's part of their thinking in all of this. Like, what are we doing here if we end up giving him a top 5 wide receiver contract? We might need to do that if we had Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins, the guys that truly need a supporting cast. We don't need to do that with number 5. 301-230-0980. What does it look like without Terry? Try to quantify it. I say at the most, I really wanted to say, as much as I love Terry, it's really not going to be that much of an impact. But there will be an impact. He is a contested catch guy. He is a big game guy. We've seen that at times. He is a deep threat still. So they would miss him. They absolutely would miss him. It would not cost them a playoff berth. It cost them 1 game, tops. 301-230-0980. Let's start with Skip on line 2. Skip, what do you say?
Kevin, this is the question because you're assessing his value to this team, not his value in the NFL when you talk about top 10 and all that compared to other receivers.
Yeah.
His value to this team, especially since we lost speed. Some of the, receivers that we lost had speed.
Deami.
And we have a rookie with speed. But other than that, Deebo Samuels is like a 4.8 guy. Terry still, at age 29 going on 30, is a legit 4.4 guy. So he's I believe.
Deebo's, just so you know, Deebo's not a 4.8 guy, Skip.
No, I said a 4.8 guy.
Oh, okay. I thought you said a 4.8 guy. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay.
He's a 4.4. So let's say 4.5.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Phenomenal after the catch when he's healthy.
Absolutely, like a running back. But Terry is a legit, 4.35, which he ran in the combine as a rookie, and probably still 4.4. Still in his prime, like he said, he made a good point that the number of years that he's played is not similar to most 30-year-old guys. He's played 2 years less than most 30-year-old guys. And so he's probably still in his prime. He hasn't had many injuries. And we saw last year, he could still, like you said, he could still go deep and probably better than anybody else on the team at this point. So we're going to miss that. And, they always talk about how important chunk plays are. He's still capable of getting chunk plays as well as contested balls.
No doubt.
So
we saw plenty of them last year. 66 yards against Cleveland, 86 yards against Dallas, and in the playoff game, taking a bubble screen, breaking a tackle, and going 58, 59 yards for a touchdown. Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to say 2 games.
Ooh.
Even though I understand what you're saying, 1 is actually a lot. And,
it is a lot.
2 is a stretch, but it could be when you're talking about closely contested games and you're at the end of the game where you need that guy. And so I'm saying his value to this team is much more than he would be for other contending teams. So I'm going to say 2 games, and I know it's a stretch, but I think he is that valuable to this team. And look, I think anything that doesn't have a 3-0 million at least is kind of almost an insult to his value to this team.
Okay, thanks for the call, as always, Skip. The only thing that I would say when you say the value for this team is that in many ways their thought process may be he's much more valuable to a team that doesn't have an elite quarterback. He's much more valuable to the teams that have guys like Geno Smith and Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins. He's not starting anymore, obviously. Jared Goff, okay? With the elite level quarterback, and that's what we have here. And I think they believe that's what we have here. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar, Burrow. I mean, Burrow's got an unbelievable supporting cast, but especially as a dual threat elite quarterback, just elevates everything around it. Everything around it. I think that the other part that I didn't mention is what would be missed off the field. He'd be missed in that locker room. He is a culture guy. He is a leader on the team. But, man, this team is stacked with veteran leadership. Everywhere you look, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, add Von Miller now into the mix. I know he just got here. They have a lot of that everywhere you look. Let's go to Cato. Cato, thanks for holding. What would life look like without Terry? Try to quantify it if you can.
4 games. Why I say that, you look at the Dallas game last year with Mariota, he caught the winning pass to that, so that's 1 game. You look at the Cincinnati game, he caught that big pass down the end, that's 2 games. You look at the Detroit game, Jaden only threw a 2-yard pass. He took it the other 58, 56 yards. So it was him. Yes, does he have an elite quarterback? Yeah, he does, but the elite quarterback needs somebody to throw to because he can't do it all. If he could do it all, they'd have been in the Super Bowl and won it. So he can't do it all.
Well, the opponent had something to do with that, and so did the defense. But you're right. Mahomes may have elevated them just a little bit further.
Ridiculous. It's 4 games. He's a 4-game guy. All the things that he can do and be over.
Nobody's a 4-game guy.
Here's the biggest thing. It's new chemistry. I don't know what can happen this year and how good that offense can be because it's new chemistry. People that haven't been there. Debo don't even last the whole year. So I'm not sure. If you let Terry not be there, I don't know who you go to when Debo goes down.
So a couple things. First of all, I love your passion. No player in the NFL has a war, for the lack of a better description, or an expected points added of 4 games net difference, except for quarterbacks. But with that said, going back to the games that you pointed to last year, look, if Terry doesn't catch that ball, they still likely win the game. They kick a field goal, they're up
Dallas
8.
Or Cincinnati?
The Cincinnati game I meant. Did I say Dallas? Okay. My fault. The Cincinnati game, they still probably win that game. The Dallas game at the end was, 2 teams. Washington's playing for seeding, but it wasn't like Dallas had their best and Washington put their backup quarterback into the game, etc.
He caught the winning ball.
Okay. Well, somebody else could have caught the winning ball too. I mean,
but they didn't. We're going with facts.
No,
Terry caught it,
but they would have to if you weren't there. So you got to determine, could somebody else have caught that game-winning touchdown pass from Marcus Mariota had he not been there? I'd say yes.
Caught it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I like the chemistry. I like the team. I'm a Commander, Redskin, Washington football team fan. I just believe that Terry needs to be there. At over $30 million, no. $30 million, yeah. That's all.
I'm with you. This has nothing to do with how I feel or how any of you feel about him being there or not being there. I think everybody wants Terry signed to a fair contract extension, and he's happy, the team's happy, and we have our best receiver and one of the top 3 players perhaps on the football team out there for not just this year, but beyond. But I'm just trying
here's my last thing I want to say.
Sure.
I think Terry should be at camp. I know what he's going through. I know what he's fighting for, but he should be in camp, period. That way it would make it harder on the management. I just think Terry should be in camp. I'm not mad at him for it, but my opinion is he should be there at camp.
I hear you. Thanks, Cato. Appreciate the call. Ryland, Steve, Bay, TC, Greg, stay on hold. What would life look like without Terry? Try to quantify it in terms of how many fewer games do you think they would win in 2025 if he were not a part of the roster? He's going to be. I understand this. But I do want to kind of gauge the value you think Terry brings to the team. I say it would cost them 1 game max, tops. The quarterback is the reason they won 12 more than anything else last year. Without Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin on the field, they would have won 6 games last year, 7 games last year. That's what the quarterback means. I don't think a wide receiver, no matter how good that wide receiver is, especially playing with a quarterback that elevates everything around it, I just don't think it's more than a game. And quite honestly, I think it's probably a wash. 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Buzz Williams coming up in about 15 minutes, the new head basketball coach out at Maryland. What would life without Terry look like? It is the ultimate hypothetical because the chances that he doesn't play for this team this year, whether on an extended contract or on his existing contract, are slim and none, in my opinion. He's going to play for Washington this year. But hypothetically, if he didn't, what does it look like? How many fewer games would the team win? 301-230-0980. I got to tell you, man, I said one game, but I had to stretch to get to that one game. I think by far and away, the guy that, stirs the drink is the quarterback. They have an elite level quarterback who elevates everybody around him. Kansas City went to the Super Bowl last year without any real significant offensive threat. Other than the quarterback. And I think Jaden is in that category of being able to elevate everything around him. I think the addition of Deebo Samuel is going to be a big deal. I do. My lean is that Deebo comes in and is lean and ready to go and ends up having a big year on a contract year. Not exactly the position Terry plays, understood, but worst case, instead of winning 11, they would win 10. They would still be a playoff team. Let's go to Rylan. Rylan, what do you say?
Morning, Kev. I'm in the boat of that it doesn't move the needle. I think it's 0 because of the factor that is Jaden Daniels and what he brings to the table. I think what's going to be missed most is that feel-good faith, high culture energy that we've been accustomed to seeing. But that's what that quarterback carousel that Dan put us through the last 6+ years. So I think from that standpoint, like you say, plug and place Deebo with Noah Brown and McCaffrey, I think I could go wild getting the ball from JD5 and seeing that is
yeah. I'm open because everybody's focused on him.
I'm a 6'5" bag of milk, but I can catch a ball if you throw it perfectly. But I think it's going to be.
Are you 6'5"?
Oh yeah, big boy.
Yeah.
Not much fast though, not much speed for me. So just more of the body presence there. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be 0 games. And I love Terry. I think he's just going to be missing from the culture standpoint. But from on the field play, I think Jaden Daniels is all we need. So looking forward to getting him signed, hopefully. But let's hope they can get it done. But yeah, looking forward to hearing what the other fellas have to say. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate it. Remember, before that catch on Monday night against Cincinnati, remember what we were complaining about the first few weeks of the season. Why aren't you targeting Terry? There were a couple of games there. Now, I know they lost one of those games, fair point, the opener against Tampa, and they could have lost the game against the Giants. So in the 2 games, I'm going back to pull up his stats. I mean, remember he had 17 yards worth of receptions in the opener, 22 yards worth of receptions in week 2, and they were 1-1. And the night that they lost on Thursday Night Football to Philadelphia, he had 1 catch for 10 yards, and they lost the game. He had 2 catches for 19 yards in the game against the Giants on the road, but he had 2 touchdowns, including that unbelievable dime before the half that Jaden threw. Let's go to Greg. Greg, what do you say?
Hey, Kevin. Hey, I agree with you. I agree with a lot of these people. I don't think it's going to matter, and I think that our coaching staff, which seems to be really on top of things, will plan to have an offense ready with or without him. That's what depth's about. I think you won't lose much in the locker room because, like you said before, the veterans that we have, and they'll pick up the slack. And it could be a positive thing if he's not there because we have a good receiving core. And if he's not there, others will probably step up and say, okay, here's my opportunity to be number 1. So I don't think it'll make a difference. I mean, I'd like to see him there, but I don't think it matters.
I can't go to it's not going to make a difference, and it actually might be, somehow turn out to be a positive. But I think those that think that it would be the difference between being a playoff team and a non-playoff team are not giving the quarterback position and the quarterback we have enough credit because in the NFL, that's what matters more than anything else. And we've seen it over and over again, elite quarterbacks elevating every player around them. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Let's go to TC. TC, what do you say?
I'd say, thanks for taking my call, Kevin. I'd say, sure. I think all your callers and yourself, Kevin, are out of your minds. It will be definitely, we will not make the playoffs. What y'all missing is the fact that Terry is the number one receiver. Okay, and the number one receiver, most teams, they got a number one receiver that draws attention and creates on the defense. They keys on that or opens up everything else. If you don't have that, we didn't have a number one receiver.
Buffalo didn't have it last year.
Buffalo.
Kansas City didn't have it last year.
Oh, you have certain quarterbacks, two quarterbacks you can name. Those are elite.
You don't think Jaden's in that level?
Not yet. Okay. No, he's great. I love Jaden, but it's 1 year. You got to do more than 1 year, okay? I love Jaden. I'm high on Jaden. I love Jaden, but just don't get it twisted. You must have that particular one. Joe Burrow, all of them got that. Even Baker Mayfield over there with Evans, you got to have. Even in Philadelphia,
those quarterbacks have to have it. You're right. Baker Mayfield has to have it. Jared Goff has to have it.
No. What I'm saying is, all NFL teams have to have it.
Well, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, they were two of the final four teams standing, and they didn't have a number one.
Yeah, that's last year. Allen had first was a number one before he traded and got out of there. He had it, and then that's how he got where he was. That's how he became great and got where he had it. Okay, Mahomes is special. And then you want to call him Mahomes with Kansas City. Travis Kelce is the number one.
Yeah, but he's older. They won 15 games and got to the Super Bowl with Kelce looking like he's on his last leg. Look, here's the point you're missing, Greg. Here's the point you're missing from your argument. Let me help you. Buffalo and Kansas City were excellent defensive teams. So that would be the pushback to Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes didn't have a great offensive supporting cast, and yet they were in the Final Four. Both teams were excellent defensively. Now, Josh Allen and Buffalo, exceptional offensively as well without it. So I appreciate your thought, your opinion. I just disagree with you.
You got 32 teams in the NFL, and you just named 2 teams.
Yeah, well, they were 2 of the Final Four. That's why I named them. And they have 2 of the elite quarterbacks.
But you look at the whole league, there is a number one receiver with an elite. You remember our 15 elite quarterbacks in the league with one of the 15 elite quarterbacks.
Well, Terry's not an elite receiver. He's a very good receiver. He's not an elite receiver. Burrow is the one of the elite quarterbacks that has, an elite receiver in Jamar Chase and has an unbelievable pairing in Chase and Higgins.
Okay. All right. We just won't disagree on that.
Yeah, we're just going to disagree. I think that they absolutely would still be a very good team without him, but I'm not saying that they wouldn't miss him. Let me move on, Greg. I got to get through some of these calls. I've got too many people on hold. Steve, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. How you doing?
Good, Steve.
Yeah. So I think it's going to I don't think it's going to be as positive as everybody else think it is. Terry, I think from a professional standpoint, everybody's going to come in and try to do what they need to do to keep the ball rolling. But to know that you're number one, a person that's done everything, never been injured, has exceeded his contract, there is going to be an emotional letdown in that locker room to know that he didn't get his money. As far as how many games I think in effect, I think it's going to set them back at least 3 games.
Wow.
I think it is. And especially, I really believe that.
Well, we lost Steve. He had a bad phone there. Yeah, let's get the phone wasn't great anyway. 2 what do you say? 3 games. Got a lot of people that think it would be a lot of games. Bay, thanks for holding. What would life without Terry look like? Quantify it in terms of how many fewer games would they win. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going, Kevin? Thanks for taking my call, man. I see this as you losing that last child to go to college or move out the house.
Yeah.
It's been fun, and we enjoyed ourselves, but it's going to be difficult. If Jaden Daniels is who we say he is, it's not going to affect us at all. But if he isn't, I think it's going to affect us at least 2 games. I understand Terry does not have the elite separation. He catches most of his catches are with his body, so that's why it's contested. But at the end of the day, if somebody's on that roster that we got on there that was waiting for that opportunity that can create separation, we probably won't miss Terry at all. But as a fan, you know how we fall in love with him. He our guy. I would love to have him back. That's all I got to say, Kev.
Thanks, Bay. Yeah, that was an interesting point you made. I don't think I've heard that point made. He's a chest catcher. He doesn't get the separation. That's why the contested catch rate is high. I think he's just very good in contested catch situations. I think he's a physical attacker of the football in those situations, and he seems to catch everything, whether it's chest catching or hands catching in those situations. Rod, finish it up for us. Go ahead.
Hey, Kev, what's up, brother?
What's up, Rod? How are you?
I'm good, man. Look, so I would say I think it would at least 3 games. Look, you said something about Kansas City and Buffalo that I've been thinking for a while, and you said it. They got a defense, man.
That would be the comeback too. Yeah.
The only way Terry absence wouldn't affect this team more than 3 games, our defense will have to be top 5, and our running game will have to be. We would need one of those backs to run for about 1,200 yards. Outside of that, I mean, to be in the division with the Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas is coming back. I'm not sleeping that much on the Giants because they always give us problems anyway. I think at the end of the day, I love Jaden Daniels. He's my man. But to put him in the same category with Patrick Mahomes right now or Josh Allen, not yet. But so those guys, they can go without a number 1 receiver, so to speak, because they got a good defensive team and they just got a good team, period. But now,
Buffalo's offense was ridiculous without a lot of great weapons. Although I think Cook was a very good back for them.
Running back is like that. That running back they got, man.
You're right.
Running back, You're right. Yeah, they better take care of that guy. But I'm just going to say the last thing. We need Terry on this team, man. That will open it up. That will open up things for Debo. I don't think Debo by himself.
I don't disagree with you. I'd much rather have him than not have him. I just think that if we didn't have him, I think that the idea that they would not make the playoffs or they would win 2, 3, 4 fewer games is an exaggeration, and no wide receiver's EPA, is equivalent to that many games lost. And it's certainly not Terry's, all due respect.
Look what happened to Houston last year when my man lost one of his receivers. They kind of fell back a little bit. There's one thing about it is Jaden Daniels is a second-year guy. So we need and to be playing in the NFC East, we need every weapon we can have to go against Philly and against Dallas. I hear you. Remember, we split against Dallas last year.
I'd still feel pretty good about this team's ability to win 9+ games and make the postseason without a true number 1 wide receiver. I would because of the quarterback. Thanks. Appreciate the calls. Okay. Appreciate that, Rod. Maybe we'll come back to this next hour. When we come back, Buzz Williams is the new head basketball coach at Maryland. He joined me yesterday. We had a nice conversation. I want you to hear it when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. You can also watch us on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and the like button when you get there. All right, joining me right now for the first time of hopefully many times to come, the new head coach of Maryland men's basketball, Buzz Williams. Buzz has won everywhere he's been: Marquette, Virginia Tech, and most recently Texas A&M. 11 NCAA tournament trips in the 17 seasons he spent in Milwaukee, Blacksburg, College Station, 4 Sweet 16s, and Elite 8. It's great to have you on the show. You've been here for a few months, and I know it's been tough getting settled, especially with having to remake the whole roster. I just mentioned the 3 places that you have spent the last 16 to 17 years living in with your family. How has it been so far adjusting to, a much bigger market in the D.C. area?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you. Everything has been good. I think we've been here. Well, I've been here a little over 100 days. And to your point, I think we were 6 years in Milwaukee, 5 years in Blacksburg, and 6 years in College Station. My wife and I got married towards the tail end of my career as an assistant. I started as a head coach at the University of New Orleans. So we've kind of lived all over the place. Our children were born. We have 4 children. They were all born at different stops along the way. It has been a long time since we've lived in a non-college town. And so it's been a good change of pace. Anytime there's transition in jobs, whether you're the head coach or assistant coach, there's a lot of moving parts as it relates to jobs and your staff and the spouses and the children and everything thus far. You never know because you haven't lived it yet, but I think we've tried to make sound decisions personally and sound decisions professionally. But as you mentioned, Kevin, it's all been happening at warp speed. And that's kind of what has happened, not just at Maryland, that happens everywhere now in college athletics within what the model has become. And so to some degree, when I was hired, it was somewhat later in the process than normal. And when there's 0 players on the team, that's not a complaint. That was just a reality. And
Right.
How do you make progress relative to not only making decisions for now, but trying to also position yourself as best you can with the future as it relates to the players that are available, whether that be freshmen, whether that be in the portal. And so our staff's done a really good job, in my opinion, of trying to make sure that we find the right people and the right families, but also the right talent. And so we went at it as hard as we can, and we're thankful to be here. And not everybody has moved yet, but it's getting closer. And once summer session 2 ends, it'll take a couple of more weeks, but everybody's at different stages. Some of them are still in the hotels. Some of them are fully settled. And if you come to my house and you want to help unpack boxes, there's plenty to do.
One of the things that I remember from your introductory press conference a few months ago, and it was very funny, you were talking about one of your sons who was at, I think it was like East Texas Baptist State, and and you said, for those of you who don't know it, it's in Texas and it's in the eastern part of Texas.
Yeah, he's reminded me of that many times.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of anxiety on my part. I apologize.
No, that was great.
I was a little tongue-tied on some of the things that I wanted to communicate, and his coach has mentioned that to me a few times too. So, free plug. But yeah, Mason is our youngest son, and he played there last year, and he's lived with us this summer, but we'll be going back. I'll have to move him back to Texas once we finish summer school here. So we tried to see if we could get him in the Division III transfer portal for non-monetary decisions, but for proximity to his mom and dad, and it didn't work. So we'll have to move him back to Texas in a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. Well, what year is he?
He'll be a sophomore.
Okay.
Yes,
so
thanks for asking.
Yeah,
He'll be a sophomore.
So hopefully next year you find something much closer. But you mentioned the fact that, you've been in college towns, Blacksburg and College Station. Two coaches ago here, Mark Turgeon, he came from College Station to College Park, which was, a massive change. He had been in places like Wichita and Jacksonville before. Have you had a chance to spend time with him or talk to him about the adjustment that he and his wife Ann had to make coming to DC?
Yeah, I've talked with Coach a couple of times. I've tried to be respectful to all of the coaches. Obviously, Coach Williams, Coach Drizel's family, Coach Wade. I've tried to, Coach Willard, I've tried to be respectful in honoring all of their work and time that they've given to the institution, while at the same time trying to do the things that I need to do. I have known Coach Turgeon specifically nearly my entire career. Obviously, he replaced Billy Gillespie. I was an assistant for Billy Gillespie, and by the time Coach Turge got to College Station, I had already became a head coach, but a lot of the players that were on his team when he arrived were players that I had recruited or been a part of recruiting. And so I have known Coach Turge forever. And he and I have texted and spoken a few times. I haven't had a chance to see him in person since I have been here, but I have a long list of things to do on my phone. Hopefully that I can knock some of those things off in August. And seeing Coach Turge is one of those things.
How much did you know about Maryland basketball and its tradition and history before taking the job?
Yeah, good question. Transparently, Kevin, I knew probably the top shelf part of it. Most of my career, I have studied coaches more than I have studied programs. I've studied coaches more than I have studied players, just because I grew up wanting to be a coach and wanting to learn from excellent leaders in all sports, not just in basketball. And so I was more familiar with the coaches at Maryland than I was the program at Maryland. And I understand in some ways you could say that's interconnected, but I have learned more in the 100+ days that I've been here about Maryland and the program and the support of the program, the importance of the program, and what it means within not only the campus community, but the community and the state and the region. And so I feel very honored and humbled to steward what has been an unbelievable history. I've been reading several books since I've been hired, a little bit on the program, a little bit on more of the former players and former coaches. So I'm more educated than I was the first day that I met you. And so I feel blessed to even be able to be in this office and be in this facility.
You have probably, as you said, over the 100 days, learned a lot more. Is there one thing more than any other thing that when you spend time with Maryland people, they've emphasized to you?
Yeah, good question. I think today is the 112th day.
Okay.
I think what's been emphasized the most is just what a home court advantage Xfinity is. And, that happens at other places, and it sounds like it's very much a part of the Big Ten and the difficulty in winning on the road, maybe more so than other Power Four leagues. That's one of the things on my list that I will study some in August as we start studying some of the Big Ten teams and style of play and some of their rosters. I haven't heard one person that has evidence that has not mentioned, among many things, the one prevailing thought is the advantage of Xfinity, the support, the crowds, the students, the season ticket holders, the longtime season ticket holders, like how important it is and how consistent they are in their support and what a difficult place it is to win at. I mean, I've even had other Big Ten coaches tell me that, and I'm like, well, I appreciate you telling me. Obviously, I haven't been there for a game, so I didn't know. But everybody, that has for sure been a prevailing thought.
Yeah, I asked you that question because I thought that might be the thing, because I was weaned on Maryland basketball. I grew up during the lefty era. I was in Cole Fieldhouse. I was there as a student, and I've said for many, many years, in this city, there is no more electric atmosphere and more difficult environment than College Park for a big game. Now, you may not feel it in November and December if a ranked team isn't in there, but for a big game, the ACC coaches, the Big Ten coaches will tell you there wasn't a tougher place to play. I was actually trying to figure it out, and you already answered the question, but I realized that, you got to Virginia Tech as Maryland had just moved to the Big Ten. So you never have, at any stop, coached against Maryland or coached in College Park.
That's correct. There is some symmetry in some of what you're talking about. A couple of things. When I went to Virginia Tech, the Big East, current Big East, had only been in place for one season. So the year we went to the Elite Eight, which was my 5th year at Marquette, we won, co-shared the Big East regular season championship, and that was when, in essence, that was the last game of that version of the Big East. And then what the Big East became was my last year at Marquette, and that's when all of this was beginning. The first round of the shift was happening as it relates to Maryland, as it relates to Notre Dame, multiple schools in regards to the shift. And that was when the shift took place. Obviously, it didn't affect me going to the ACC, but my first Division I head coaching game was in the Black Coaches Association tournament, which was at the University of Maryland in 2006, November of 2006.
Okay.
And we played Vermont and Hampton. So I have never coached against or at the University of Maryland, but I have played on the University of Maryland's campus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, in 2006, Xfinity was about 3 years old at that point.
Yeah, I think Coach Williams mentioned was it 2002-03 season, the first season of Xfinity?
Yeah, exactly. They won the national championship in the final year at Cole Fieldhouse in 2002, and then Xfinity opened the following year. So the fall, early December of 2002 into 2003. Exactly.
And so the last regular season game at Cole was in the March of 2002, and then later in that month they won the championship.
Yeah, they crushed Virginia in the final game ever played at Cole, and won the regular season. And they finished ranked, second or third in the country. They were the 1 seed in the East, and they went on to win the national championship, beating Kansas in the semis and Indiana in the final. But that game against Virginia, the final game in Cole, was memorable. But about 2 weeks earlier, Coach, they had played Duke in a 1-3 matchup, I think. And it was part of that several-year period where Maryland and Duke may have been the best rivalry in the sport. And the building on that day at Cole, and Maryland won that game, it was insanity. And, as great as Xfinity is, and it's phenomenal, Cole was even better.
And that has been, sorry to interrupt you, has been something else of our generation, the generations ahead of us. That has been another prevailing thought about Cole Fieldhouse. So much so that this would have been early in my tenure when I was still living in the hotel. Coach Lashley's been an unbelievably kind onboarder in helping me with all of this. And a couple of times I had mentioned to him, hey, Coach, when nobody's around, can I just have an hour of your time here or there and just talk to me about Maryland, talk to me about the school, talk to me about football, talk just anything. And one of the times that we spent, he came and picked me up at the hotel, and this was like late at night, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to take you on a tour. Nobody will see us."
Yeah.
And he took me
to Cole
Fieldhouse.
Yeah, the football facility.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, everybody's been telling me about this. What do they do with this now?" And he's like, "Oh, this is our facility." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know." And it's like 11 o'clock at night, and it's just Coach and I, and we pull up, and I was like, "Coach, this is like cool." And like I'm old now, so a lot of things I don't say are cool anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Wow, this is like really unique that they have utilized and transformed Cole Fieldhouse into what it is now." It's at like past, present, and future. A lot of great stories and memories and experiences in that building.
Well, right in the middle of campus, sat 14,500. There was no air conditioning, so it would get hot as hell in there, and it was an absolute, snake pit to play in for opponents. And those were the ACC days, and many ACC years in Xfinity but you would walk into that building and you would look down on the arena, and there would be the Carolina baby blue uniforms going through layup lines and Maryland on the other end. Lefty really is the man responsible for making college basketball what it is in this area. I had the pleasure of being able to work with Coach Thompson at the radio station for many years. He hosted the show after mine, and Big John used to say, without Lefty, there would have been no Georgetown. Because college basketball was nothing in this area until Lefty arrived in 1969 and said he was going to make it the UCLA of the East. But he turned Maryland into an absolute power in the 70s. And Buzz, he had teams that would have been Final Four teams, but back then, only one team per conference could go to the tournament.
Yeah, good point.
And
good point.
But that building hosted Texas Western in Kentucky in the '66 final, which was the first time 5 black players started for a college basketball team. It was very historic, the place was. But yes, now it's an incredible football facility for Coach Locks. All right, so you mentioned something already, but how much different has this year been for you in a new place versus your last few stops? Because no chance you ever came into a place and actually had to rebuild the roster from scratch.
Yes, sir. I try to handle all of this in the same way I would handle it publicly or privately, and just speak the truth. None of it do I say in a complaining tone. None of it do I say in an arrogant or egotistical way. This is the 5th time I've taken a head coaching job, but it's the first time that I've taken a head coaching job in the era of the portal and NIL.
Right.
And the previous 4 times and this time, there is no comparison. The only comparison is, I have to move houses, move states, move my family. That part stays the same. But whether you're in football or basketball or baseball, it's a different job. It's a different industry. And everybody's trying to figure out, like, okay, how does this work and what's the appropriate way? And nobody necessarily has all the answers because this just happened. And so there's not a lot of data on, okay, what's the best way to go about it? And so, like when the portal began, I didn't take another job. I was already in a job. And one of our thought processes was, well, let's get as many good players as we can from the portal who are the youngest, best players so that they will have eligibility remaining. And then as it unfolded, hey, let's make sure we develop great relationships with the young men and their families, because maybe part of the niche we can create is once someone arrives, no matter where they arrive from or what age they are, we want them to stay, and we want to have a plan and a vision for their development that we all are on the same page. The staff, the kids, the players, the families, their coaches, their agents, because if you're constantly turning over your roster, no matter how good the player or how good your plan is, if it's ever changing relative to the people, that's hard to build continuity. And over the last, since all of this has started, we had among the lower transfer rates in the country. Is that because we had the best players? No. The best coaches? No. But I think the vision and the plan was very similar. And so when you take a job and you've never taken a job in this era of athletics, how do you want to do it? Do you want to sign all players from the portal? Do you want to sign all guys that are going into their senior year? Do you want to sign some freshmen? And so you never know because it's all happening at warp speed. But we've just tried to maybe diversify as best we can while not sacrificing the character and the work ethic and what we want our program to be about relative to the intangibles. And so where are we? I don't know. Do I think our decision-making matrix, we kind of went about it in a systematic way, even though it was happening really, really fast? I think we did. But there's no way for me to compare, hey, when you left Marquette and went to Virginia Tech, what was it like? And when you left Virginia Tech and went to Texas A&M, what was it like? Or when you left A&M and came to Maryland, what was it like? Well, it was different than all of them, not because anything is wrong and not because I'm complaining. It's just because that's what the industry has become.
Right. You know, you saying the lowest transfer rates, I think one of the things we as Maryland fans and Maryland people have learned about you over the last couple of months is just how much your players loved playing for you and respected you. And we've seen a lot of those videos and highlights, and some of those players came from Texas A&M with you to Maryland. So, you know, given that you've got essentially 15 new players, I mean, Maryland's team last year, which made it to the Sweet 16, was a completely new team. But do you have a hunch at this point in late July about what you've put together and how it will play out on the floor when you get to November?
Sure. We probably handle the summers, Kevin, a little differently. But I would say that probably all coaches would say the same if asked that question. Maybe how you would utilize the 8 weeks you can work in the summer 10 years ago is different than how you would utilize the summer now. I think when you take a job and you have to put together an entire roster, I think then the summer changes even more. And I don't know if we've went about this the right way. Although we're in week 6 of 8, I kind of think that we have gained some traction. Number one, most importantly, in my opinion, is the relationship category. I want to spend some time with these guys. A lot of the things that players say about me, it's just because they're good people and they're covering up a lot of my deficiencies, to be kind. But I also think there is an element of my willingness to give my time to them to invest in their life. Every now and then we'll talk about dribbling better or trying to shoot a different ball, but more importantly, who they are as young men and who they're going to become. So I try to invest most of my time in the summer in getting to know who they are, what's important to them, what they like, what they don't like, how can I help them, what are their trigger points. And you can only do that through time. And so we utilized our first 3 weeks. We never practiced 5-on-5 whatsoever, just because I wanted to be in the gym. I wanted to sweat with them. I wanted to actually learn their game. I think part of our jobs as coaches is to put our teams in positions to be successful. And sometimes you can have a system and you always get the best players, and that's okay. I think for the path that I have been on, I think my job is to adjust how we coach based on our personnel. And so the first 3 weeks of June that we worked, it was a lot of skill work, with one guy, occasionally with two. Every now and then we would do with three guys. Once every 2 weeks, we would do it with fours, just to, hey, I want to learn who they are. I want to learn their pace. I want to learn their motor. I want to learn how they think. I want to learn how they listen. And then as we have kind of unfolded the month of July, a lot of it's just been discovery on, hey, would this work relative to our roster? And so we call them OTAs, just like you hear in the NFL,
right.
Organized team activity. And we just take one portion of what we're thinking about doing on offense and really drill down on that, clips on that, numbers on that, take notes on that, show them film on that, and then do that, only that aspect on the floor. And if that fleshed out appropriately, go into OTA number 2 and build on it. If it didn't flesh out the right way, we go into OTA number 2 and try something else. And so we've had 6 offensive OTAs thus far. We're off on Wednesdays, which is why I'm doing this with you now. And then we start our first defensive OTA tomorrow. And so we'll start at ground zero tomorrow and what we do defensively. And there's a little bit of we're more convicted on what we want to do defensively not because of our personnel, but just because of how we want to play. But offensively, we're still trying to maybe connect some dots on, does this make sense relative to our roster? Should we expand that? Should we eliminate that? So those 6 OTAs, our guys were great. We made some progress, and then we're going to try to do the same thing as we start defensive OTAs tomorrow.
4 months away from home opener on a Friday night in College Park against Georgetown. I know you don't know a lot. I'm sure you've learned a lot about the history of the Maryland-Georgetown thing, but it looks like finally it's going to become more regular. And, I asked that question not knowing if you would actually be able to, have a hunch at this point. I would guess, correct me if I'm wrong, it probably takes until early in conference schedule to really know what you have, even in a normal year, right?
Yeah, I think again, I hope this is not clipped out and put on the internet where it comes across in the wrong sort of tone of voice or word usage. I think when you have a brand new team, every day is a brand new day.
Yeah, right.
And it's a brand new day, whether it's the summer, it's a brand new day, whether it's the fall, whether it's non-conference, whether it's conference. I think that I like, and I'm getting better at knowing who our group is. And I think one of the things that we've tried to do at appropriate times is try to teach all of us, not just the players, teach everyone on the staff some of the history that about the program, that about the institution. I think part of what has made Maryland so great for so long from a sustainability standpoint is not just the care and not just the support, but if you talk to this player or this coach from 20 years ago or 10 years ago, there is a connection. And I think we, as all of us are brand new, we need to get involved in understanding the history. I just had lunch. I never eat lunch, and I just had lunch because I had a visitor.
Why don't you eat lunch? You just don't make time for it?
Yes, sir. I don't. Yes, sir. I don't eat lunch. And so I had 2 people that I hadn't met that came to campus, and I had lunch with them, and they were telling me, and you probably know this, that this is the first time they believe in at least a decade that Georgetown and Maryland have played. Do you know if that's accurate?
That we played in 15 and we played in 16 as part of the Gavitt games. Mark and JT3 scheduled back-to-back years, which was great. And by the way, Maryland won both of those games. They won in College Park in 15 and then in an incredible comeback down like 9 with 2 minutes to go. A guy that was visiting with you the other day, Anthony Cowan, as a freshman, was incredible in the comeback. But yes, and this has been a desire of a lot of sports fans and, of course, college basketball fans in this area that Maryland and Georgetown play every year. There were a lot of reasons. There's a lot of history. Gary will be able to, as Maryland's greatest coach ever, be able to catch you up on all of that history. But there was some bad blood, during those years. But it's great that it's resuming, and it'll become a top 5, top 10 date on the sports calendar in the DMV every year if Maryland and Georgetown play.
It's interesting. Thanks for the knowledge there of the history. It's interesting that you would say all that. The guy that I met with, he goes, "Hey, Buzz." He used some different words, but you'll get the gist. He goes, "Buzz, now let me break this down for you." And I go, "Yes, sir." And we're talking about Maryland and Georgetown. And of course, I know that we're playing here and all of that, but I didn't know there was a 10-year gap or 9 years now. And he goes, "Buzz, this is what it is. It's the Cowboys and Redskins on Thanksgiving Day. You know that, don't you?" And I go, "Yes, sir. I grew up on that."
Yeah.
I know they may not play on Thanksgiving Day, and I know they're not called the Redskins anymore, but yes, sir, I remember that. He goes, "That's what it'll be in here on that night at Xfinity." And I go, "Okay, I appreciate that. That helps me. That clues me in." So I have great respect for Coach Cooley. Obviously, we competed against each other and have known each other. I think actually we both became head coaches at the same exact time. And so when he got the job at Fairfield is when I got the job at New Orleans.
Right.
So that'll be great.
That was Buzz Williams with me. There was more to it, and he talked about being a big Cowboys fan, and we talked a little bit about that. You can catch that on my podcast from yesterday. I'll follow up on some of the things he said when we come back. Ben Standing, 10 minutes away from Ashburn. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Ben Standig is going to join us in about 6 or 7 minutes from training camp. He'll tell us what happened out there today. Apparently, not a great day for the offense. If you think things like that matter, stay tuned. I think Buzz Williams, that's the first, long conversation I've had with him, and it's the first conversation I've had with him on the air. I think he's an interesting guy. Very interesting. So many of you guys have tweeted me. He keeps calling you sir. He calls everybody sir. He's very Texas. He's very old school. And yeah, that's who he is. I mean, my sense is very genuine. And there's a real relatability to him with his players and coaches. There is an incredible loyalty that he has inspired everywhere he's gone, from players, coaches, people within the program. It's amazing what he had to do when he got to Maryland. There isn't one holdover from last year's roster. He had to build a roster at the college basketball Power 4 level, 0 to 15. 1 to 15. 15 new players. Now, several of them came from Texas A&M with him, including Pharrell Payne, who is a 6'9", 250-pound forward who is super athletic. He played at Minnesota before transferring to A&M last year. Miles Rice from Indiana will come in. He'll probably be a big part of the equation in the backcourt. But college basketball is really now about, you really don't have any clue until you start to play the games for the majority of teams, because most teams change significantly year to year with the portal and with what is, basically annual unrestricted free agency. I did want to mention he's throwing out the first pitch tonight at the Orioles game at Camden Yards against Colorado. And he has a really cool event on August 2nd. It's called Buzz's Bunch. It's a one-day camp that includes the team, lots of friends, community partners, and it's inclusive activities centered around teaching the fundamentals of basketball, with the benefit of all of it going to children with special needs. If you want to find out more about it, email khack at KAYHACK at UMD.edu. His team in the all too early bracketologies that come out, during the spring after the championship game and into the summer, Maryland's in a bunch of them as a 10 seed, 11 seed making the tournament. So there is some thought that A, he's a really good coach, and B, that the talent they added in the offseason will be good enough to compete for a tournament bid in 2025, 2026. Really tough schedule, including opening with Georgetown at home on a Friday night in College Park. That will be a scene for sure for his first home game. All right, Ben Standig next after these words from a few of our sponsors. You're listening to the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, theteam980.com. You can also watch us on the Team 980 YouTube page. Hit the subscribe button when you get there. Ben Standing is with us, as he is every day during training camp, 12 noon, right here on the Team 980. Ben, of course, now has a Substack place of writing. You can find it at lastmanstanding.substack.com. You can just link to it by following Ben on X and on Twitter at Ben Standing. So, day 3 practice after the veterans reported on Tuesday, and still no Terry. Was it you who asked Quinn about Terry this morning?
I did. I was just kind of like, we haven't brought this up now. I mean, I don't know if it needs to be a daily question, and Quinn, as he didn't really answer it. But yeah, so I was like, I kind of feel like we need to bring it up again. So, since he's not the one in the negotiations, I think I just asked, hey, are you kind of surprised that it's still going? And he just said, hey, you don't have to ask if we get this done, I'll tell you. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. But yeah, I mean, I think, look, obviously it's the topic. I mean, there's nothing else to say, and it wasn't asked. In fact, we had Zach Ertz today in the tent, and he was not asked about Terry. But when it was over, press conference was over, and he walked out, he said, sort of out loud, generally, he was like, "Boy, nobody asked the question I thought I was going to get," meaning Terry. and it's kind of like, all right, well, how many times are we going to ask a player, what do you think? And they're all going to say the same thing of, hey, look, he's our teammate, he's our brother, he's got to do what he's got to do. I did ask Deron Payne later. I just said, you're one of the few guys who's been here longer than Terry. It's just odd that 17's not out on the field. And he's like, yeah, a little bit, but hey, it's business. He's got to do what he's got to do. So there's only so many times we can keep asking that. But, Quinn's the coach. If they're going to put him out there and we don't get Peters, then, he's got to answer these questions.
I was thinking about this after Peters spoke on Tuesday. We won't get Peters again, right?
Right. I mean, maybe cut down day or sometime before the season. But yeah, no, he in theory will not be joining us again. I mean, I guess if somehow, let's just say, the nuclear option starts happening and Terry's side says they want to trade, does Adam Peters address that? I don't know, but we'll see how they handle that. But yeah, in theory, we won't talk to him again until something is done or, cuts are happening, something like that.
Yeah. And I would assume we'll get Josh Harris right before the season starts. Maybe that's the wrong assumption, but I think we got that last year right before the season started, right or not?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, obviously with Josh Harris, the stadium situation could lead him to being in front of a microphone sooner than that, especially if the August 1st vote happens and it goes positively. He may come out then, and then I guess somebody could flip in a Terry question. But yeah, no, yeah. I mean, yes, we're not going to hear from anybody who's actually involved in the discussion until either it gets resolved or we get, right up to the season.
On the stadium front, I had Eric Flack on the show in the first hour today because I think that yesterday the presentation was we're a week away from this thing being finalized and done. That's actually not the case. There are 2 votes required on this. One a week from today, and then another one in mid-September. And it's not simple majority. More likely than not, it's 2/3 vote. Now, it's still an odds-on and a heavy odds-on favorite to get done, but not within the timetable, I think, that most assumed after Mendelson, got chesty with what a much better deal he cut for the city than the one the mayor cut, which I'm not saying is inaccurate. I just thought it was strange at how sort of confrontational it was in that tweet. But anyway, we move on. I'm going to ask you. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say on that front, when Bowser and Harris had that press conference in April to announce they'd come to an agreement, I think generally for casual people, they thought, okay, this is a done deal. The stadium is happening. And rather it was more like, well, we came up to this agreement and we're going to sort of put the onus on the DC City Council to be the bad guy here and say no, but we've done our part. It kind of felt like Mendelson sort of did the same. Like he was like, okay, I've heard now from the commanders, the president's weighing in. Okay, I've now taken it to the next step, but it is still, and I heard this from Eric Flack, I think he was on with Grant and Danny, like, hey, no, actually, it's not the council who got here. It's the chairman, and he's kind of doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They all want, the credit for it if it indeed happens, and I think it will. But as I said to Eric earlier today, most people don't pay attention to all of this. And this will be attached to, and I think in many ways justifiably so, to Mayor Bowser's legacy. They're not going to remember. Nobody remembers, unless you were really paying attention, what the city council vote was for Nats Park to bring the Expos here. And 15, 20 years from now, just like Sharon Pratt Kelly was hung out to dry for chasing Jack Kent Cooke to Maryland back in, the mid-90s, Mayor Bowser is going to get the credit for this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, she, and without getting overly political, like, she to me seems to have done a pretty masterful job. Ted Leonsis was, seemingly on the verge of taking those teams out. She reeled that back in. She has seemingly done as well as any Democrat when it comes to dealing with the president of the United States. She kept, whatever the deals have come up, she's been able to forge a relationship seemingly with him in ways that others haven't. And she got James Comer in the Oversight Committee to help. I think the Oversight Committee wanted to get rid of the RFK site to a degree because smaller, get rid of the property, smaller government, whatever. But she still was able to forge that relationship, not be antagonistic, and now this. So yeah, I think she seems like she's done a great job for her legacy. Whether it's great for the city, what do I know about the money? But it certainly seems like she's been able to navigate these waters in a pretty successful way.
All right. We're talking to Ben Standig, of course. I'm going to ask you the question that I asked callers last hour. And that is, this is clearly hypothetical and it's not going to happen because he's going to end up playing for the team, whether it's on an extension, a contract extension, or on the final year of his deal. But what would life without Terry look like, and quantify it? How many fewer games do you think the team would win if he didn't play for the team in 2025?
Yeah, I heard you talking about this a little bit earlier. I think you were saying like the receivers may be like one game max, whereas the quarterback might, who knows, 5, 6, whatever. So it's interesting, right? Like, so I've talked about this before. You and I have talked about the idea of spending on receivers, and I'm always like, well, I wouldn't want to spend a lot on more than one. Maybe you draft another guy in the first round, and eventually that rookie contract you got to pay. But because when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels or Mahomes or Josh Allen, like those guys make everybody around them better to the point that you don't have to have the best guys. But that said, you still have to have, pretty reasonable guys, right? I mean, but it's not like Josh Allen has nobody. It's just he doesn't necessarily have one of the top 5 or 10 guys in the league. Same with Mahomes. If McLaurin were not to be here now, the idea that Jaden could make people better is not work as well. So today was a good example. It's only OTA. It's only a training camp. Sorry, it's not. It's not the end of the world. But today was a tough day for the offense. Now the defense is often ahead of the offense in these stages of the camp. We get that, but no Terry, Noah Brown. While he was stretching, I did see him moving a little bit. He looked pretty reasonable to me, different than saying getting hit, but he was moving around fine. He was high stepping and doing some other things, but he wasn't practicing today. Okay. Boy, they had Luke McCaffrey and Chris Moore kind of lined up with the ones as the receivers. Jaden's first pass was a play where Quan Martin and Mikey Sanderstill converged on the receiver. Sanderstill got the pick. Marcus Mariota's second pass got Tyler Owens jumped the play, intercepted it. It's only to say that looking at the receivers is like, oh boy, if Terry is not out here, if the nuclear option really happens, they do not have enough of a receiver. Like, I get what you're totally saying about it being only maybe a 1-game difference, but that's, for me, assuming that the other receivers are at least pretty good. Sure, they have Deebo Samuel, but, that's kind of it. And, yeah, maybe hopefully Noah Brown is able to play, but, his injury history is like, well, I don't know. We'll see. So I do think under the current circumstances, not having Terry could be kind of detrimental because they just don't have those other pieces the way, again, Buffalo and Kansas City have built their team to, hey, we have to have good receivers. We just don't have to spend $20 million or more a year to get them because we have these quarterbacks. So I think for this year it would be kind of tough.
I said to a caller, I said, look, the best arguments for no real supporting cast in Buffalo and Kansas City is their defenses. And this team's defense isn't very good, or at least as, we understand it now. It could be completely different when we get there. Look, they're better with Terry, clearly. But I wouldn't, at this point on July 25th, start to get concerned about what they have or don't have at wide receiver without him. I just don't think that what you're watching out there necessarily will be accurate, in terms of Noah Brown and Debo and McCaffrey and Gallup. And, I think that we won't know that until we see real games. Now, it's possible that they'll answer that with, we got to go out and get Amari Cooper, or we got to go out and get somebody else that's out there, and available. Because I think there are I think the receivers that are still out there are like Gabe Davis, and I think Amari Cooper is still out there, right? But not that I'd be thrilled with Amari Cooper at this point. He hasn't been very good in recent years. But there's somebody else out there. I'm forgetting who it is, but whatever. I think that Jaden would elevate everything around him, and they wouldn't fall apart without Terry. I think they'd very much be a team that would be capable of winning more games than they lose and being a postseason team. Unless I'm wrong about Jaden. But if I'm right about Jaden, if we're all right about Jaden, he'll elevate everything about around him and win more than they lose.
I think you're right about Jaden completely. I'm just saying that, the Chiefs didn't have a great receiving core once Rashee Rice got hurt, but they still have Travis Kelce. Again, if you look at the receivers that Josh Allen has, he has good guys. Curtis Samuel on that team was like the third guy, which isn't to say that Curtis Samuel, as we saw here, he's not great, but he's pretty good. I other than Debo, I think Curtis Samuel would be better than every receiver they have here, right? So I'm just saying that, for the moment, as the way this team is constituted, I don't know that just simply saying Jaden will elevate is enough. But in a broader context, if you're building a roster, and I think this is presumably how Adam Peters is having this conversation, it's like, look, man, we really like you, but I don't know that we feel we have to pay you $30 million, because with this quarterback, we can eventually get other receivers that he will be able to work with who aren't going to cost that much. But I just don't know that right now they have enough.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, because it's like, of course they would be better with him, and it would sync up with a season in which they are going for it to try to win a Super Bowl. And at the same time, part of their thinking is, we have one of those guys. If we had Dak Prescott, or we had Jared Goff, or we had Baker Mayfield or Geno Smith, there'd be more of, I think, an urgency to make sure Terry's in the fold. There's a lot of things working here. It'd be fascinating, wouldn't it be, to be able to know what those conversations about Terry are inside that building? Because I think in many ways it has less to do with age and more to do with how they really value him and how he values himself. And there's a delta there. They think he is worth this, and in part it's because of what they have at quarterback, and he's going to do that to a lot of other players, and he's looking at it like, man, I'm as good as any of these, 4 or 5 guys that are directly under Chase and Jefferson. It's interesting. I mean, what do you make of that? That my hunch is this has less to do with age and more to do with how they evaluate him in the context of the offense, the coordinator, and the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, when we were all having the discussions back in February about, hey, they should go out and get T. Higgins, or, go out and get another receiver, and I'm like, absolutely not. I don't think you spend that kind of money at that position, especially when you have the type of quarterback that it looks like they have, who elevates those around him. Like to use when the Giants had Daniel Jones, look, Daniel Jones is not nearly as good as Jaden Daniels, but the year that he had help around him, when he had Saquon, he had Andrew Thomas at tackle, he had some other pieces, he was fine. But he needs people around him. A quarterback like Jaden doesn't necessarily do that, and I imagine that is part of the conversation. What I guess I would like to know is, is there a world where, like, look, if they can't agree whether it's the years or the total money or whatever, are we really saying that, like, I don't know, 2 for $60, it's mostly guaranteed, that can't be enough? It gets Terry back in the market quick. It gets them, they're spending money while Jaden's still in the rookie deal. It keeps them at a high level here. And I'm not saying you just throw away money, but what are we talking about? Like, like, it's not that.
Well, we're talking about a big difference in overall, output to him for 2 years, because they have control over him for 2 years for a lot less money.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, look, this is what we also talked about before. This isn't just about, are they getting the best deal financially? What about what it says about them? What does it say about how they run into business and what it means to the locker room? And, again, that's why this conversation, I think, is more nuanced than I think a lot of people. I listen to, like, the national media talk about this because they just view this as they do with any other conversation of a holdout. And I can tell that, like, they don't get it, what's really happening here. They're like, is Terry wanting to reset the market or whatever? And I'm like, no, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it has to do a lot with what you're talking about, that Adam Peters and this organization, they have all the leverage. In 2022, Terry had all the leverage because this organization was a dumpster fire. And go ahead. Good luck not paying our guy when you guys are absolutely miserable. He's the only thing you have. Now, you have a quarterback. You're coming off a 12-win season. You made the NFC Championship game. In Adam, we trust. Go ahead. Not take a knock at what we're doing right now. Good luck trying to say, that we don't know what we're doing. You can't. So they have the leverage. And, like, they also have the franchise tag option next year if they want to go that route. But, then it becomes just the point of how far do you push it? And that's where this is going to get interesting. So, yeah, I do think for this season, if there's a world where Terry McLaurin is not here, whatever that means, I don't know that they have enough at receiver, even in the case of saying Jaden Daniels steps up, to be enough. This is where does Luke McCaffrey have a good summer enough where they feel comfortable?
You're arguing against the team's got all the leverage with what you just said.
Well, but that's a short term, long term. Like, look, it is what it is. They're in the box that they're in. But Adam Peters is looking at this from a long term position. If Terry's looking for a 3 and 4 year deal, that's different than saying 2025. That's all I'm saying. Like, look, if Terry's going to hold out all the way, okay. Well, I mean, that's not good. But, like, I don't think they have enough to be comfortable at receiver. But long term, do they want to have this guy locked up for all this money? And then now they can't maybe do other things. I think that's the different part of the argument. So, yeah.
I mean, what I'm looking at, here's where they have the leverage. It's the tangible stuff, like the actual dollars and cents of it, because they basically have, $15.5 million that they owe Terry in a base salary in this upcoming season. And the franchise tag next year would be like 28 or 29, somewhere around there, I think. So you're talking about 43, 44 million versus what you just suggested, 60, 2 for 30, 2 years for 30. So you have that, not to mention the fact that if for whatever reason Terry didn't produce at the same level and there was some decline noticed, they wouldn't have to franchise tag him. And you could and if he blew up and had a massive year, you could also do the contract extension next year. But it's the other stuff. It's the, it's kind of the, intangible, the abstract stuff that we're talking about where, yeah, but you want to take care of this player and you want him to be really happy and thrilled, which his professionalism may hurt him in this situation because he would never be a disgruntled player, once he, gets onto the field. And by the way, he'd have every incentive to have a massive year if this were the last year of his contract. So that's kind of working against him. But to your point, it's like, yeah, but you're trying to go for it right now. Let's try to make everybody happy and get him in the fold. It's tricky. The whole thing is. Yeah. And here we are. We're 3 days past the point both of us thought this would get to. We both thought a deal would be done before camp began.
Yeah, no, for sure. By the way, you mentioned the franchise tag. Looking at over the cap, their projection for the franchise tag next year is about $28 million.
Yeah, I see that.
So if you look at that as like a potential number, could that, could both sides, this was always the issue with Kirk Cousins and the Commanders or the Redskins at the time were offering him lower numbers, and he was like, "Cool, I'll take the tag."
Yeah,
will be fine
the numbers were much lower than the franchise tag. Yeah,
right. So here it's like, well, Terry, if you want 30, okay, but like we can just tag you next year for 28.
Right,
and
that's my point. Like to give him to give him a 3-year deal at $30 million a year with 60 to 70 guaranteed, when really right now for the next 2 they only have to guarantee 43 million if they keep them with the tag, and they've got the option to not use the tag. It's like there's a big difference there.
Right. And that's also sort of to my point of, like, again, I'm not throwing Josh Harris's money around, but factor in the look for the organization, the locker room, all that.
I know.
Can you not get, can you do a two-year deal for that money, kind of more or less, or even a little bit more? It's like, look, the Eagles did not have to give Saquon Barkley a new deal, but obviously he was amazing last year. They won a Super Bowl, and they were like, yeah, let's do this. Let's get all the good feels in there. For a guy like Terry, the year he just had, the career he's had, the guy he is, this is where I think the disconnect is a little bit for people. Is like, wait a minute, why aren't they taking care of this guy? And again, with Jaden being on the rookie deal for a couple more years, it's not like this is affecting that. When you get into the Jaden has to get paid territory, okay, then that's a different conversation. But we're not there for a couple of years, so why not just figure out how to do it? But again, we don't know exactly. Is it a years thing? Is it the money thing, or what's going on here?
Yeah, let me just also add that, doing the play it on your final year of the contract, and then worst case, we'll franchise you next year if we can't get an extension done. This is a massive cash flow advantage for the team too, because they don't have to put down 40 and put down 40 and put another 30 into escrow. So there's a lot going on here for sure that I think not everybody's thinking about from the team's perspective. But I think ultimately it comes down to there's definitely a delta here, and it's probably more driven by the way they view Terry and what he means to the team and the way he views himself. And there's just a bit of, not that they don't view him very highly. By the way, you didn't answer the question. You didn't quantify. How many fewer games would they win if he didn't play for them?
And we're assuming they don't get some equivalent receiver.
There isn't an equivalent receiver.
Well, I just mean like they make a trade, whatever. We're just saying this is the group they have.
Yes.
Whereas like in a normal scenario, I agree on your one game. I think it might be a little bit more, though, because of what I was saying. Like, I don't know that they have enough at receiver for even Jaden to lift because of just of how they've been built. It's not a knock on Jaden. It's just at some point you have to have enough.
So Ja'Cory Brooks, I saw some people tweeting out that he looks like he's headed for stardom. So you don't believe that yet?
It's so funny. I've been on the Ja'Cory Brooks. Like this, I've been saying for a while.
That you're going to be wrong, but it's not because of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I'm just like, look, I think he's a sleeper, but like anybody who's like, this is where it gets carried away. Like everybody who's acting, I see the same things. I hear people talking out there. I'm like,
I get tagged to these things all the time. I don't even respond.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I will say this, that with Terry out and Noah Brown limited, it does give these other guys opportunities. It's giving Luke McCaffrey time to play with Jaden. It's giving, Brooks or Chris Moore, others a chance to do some things. And Brooks is the kind of guy, he was a 5-star recruit at Alabama, didn't really work out there, transfers to Louisville, has a pretty good year last year with Shook, the guy that may be the Saints starter this year. He's got, some size, other traits, can play special teams. But there's also a reason why he was an undrafted free agent. I mean, he's super raw, and he also drops some passes. I don't know if that gets out on Twitter. So I'm intrigued by him as like maybe the six receiver sleeper. But yeah, that's not helping. That's not has anything to do with the Terry McLaurin or anything like that.
So let's talk about real quickly. We're talking to Ben Standing, of course. I did see all of you basically tweeting, bad day for the offense, good day for the defense. So just elaborate.
Yeah, well, like I said, first, in day one of training camp, the first pass from Jaden Daniels and 11s was the throw to Debo that I was gushing about so much the other day. You started making fun of me correctly. So, and
I was making fun of you, but you'd make fun of it too. I just said,
correctly.
Was Micah Parsons rushing Jaden or not? That's all.
100%.
Yeah.
So today, first pass, I'm not sure who the receiver was, but he throws, and Quan Martin and Mikey Sanders still converge on the ball. Gets tipped. Sanders still picks it off. First pass. Then Mariota comes in right after that. His second pass, Tyler Owens jumps the route, gets picked off. And it kind of went from there. The defense just kind of kept gaining momentum, it felt like, and the offense just couldn't quite get anywhere. But that's what I'm saying. It was that moment where I was like, looking, their receivers are not getting open here for the most part. And again, it's, the defense, it's a completely apples to oranges to a real situation. The defense knows what's coming, kind of. But I'm just saying, like, that's why I think the defense was like looking like it had more of the edge. They were, yelling and screaming as every time they were making a play, and it was some other plays too in terms of like passes defended. But again, you have to give grains of salt to all of this. But it was a day where the defense did look better, and like I said, for me, it was the moment I was like, oh boy, they really don't have their best receivers out here. And this is a little bit dicey. And look, like Jalen Lane is playing, right? A fourth-round pick opportunity for him. I haven't seen a ton of him at a receiver yet where I'm like, okay, this guy could come in and play immediately. I'm not there yet. Returner, he's got the speed, but I don't know about being a difference maker at receiver right now. And, Deebo Samuel is not a traditional receiver that you're going to say, here, we're line you up on the outside, we're throwing to you 10 times in this game and, work it. No, you get him the ball in other ways, but not that way. So I think that, to me, is kind of why the defense was getting the better of it today. And again, often at this time of year, the defense is ahead of the offense. That's always the sort of standard view. And today was certainly one of those days.
I got the transcript from the Quinn presser before practice today, and I thought that there was one interesting question and answer. I asked you the question yesterday on the show, and that is, he was asked about, you can tell me who asked the question, maybe it was you, on the difference in Daron Payne with John Allen now gone. And he said in the answer to that question, there's an energy about him and a discipline that he's really ready to take everything on. What did you make of the answer?
Yeah, if we didn't have the backdrop of 2022, where right, Daron Payne had a monster year, right? I mean, of the four defensive linemen who were picked in the first round, I think it's fair to say,
yes,
tell me if I'm wrong, that Daron's year was the best that any of them had individually.
Chase, so he's already, maybe Chase's rookie year.
Okay. So my point is that he's already done it, and John Allen was there, and they were all there. So the idea that he's now more focused because they're not there, I don't know that I completely buy that. But sure, he's still. They're all saying he appears more focused. Great. They need him to be that level. But I don't look. Whatever we think of the relationship with him and John Allen, again, John Allen was here in 2022, and Daron Payne was crushing. So I don't know that I buy that. And, whatever. Dan Quinn's got to do what he's got to do to motivate. John's not here. Chase isn't here. Montez isn't here. That all doesn't matter. Daron's here. And, if they think he's more focused and playing harder, great. But, I don't know how much I'm buying anything that it's just because John Allen's gone.
All right, last one, because I brought his name up the other day, and somebody asked about Ben Sinnott today. They actually said Ben Sinnott and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who we know that they kind of liked last year. And, Quinn brought him up unsolicited in that introductory presser as well. Any kind of, not based on what you're seeing on the field, but any with what who you're talking to, a feeling that maybe Sinnott ends up having a much larger role than we perhaps during the offseason anticipated?
I just think it comes down to how often are they using three tight ends, or look, again, I don't know about that. We don't know if Zach Ertz is going to be able to play all 17 games. A surprise he did last year, but he looks pretty good shape to me, Zach Ertz. It looks like he's, continues to, age backwards a little bit here with Washington. I think, to me, that's the question. And because other than that, like, John Bates is going to be the blocker and Ertz is going to be the main target. So how do you fit in Ben Sinnott? So I don't think it's necessarily a ding on Sinnott to say maybe he doesn't show a ton this year. It's just, you got to tell me how they get more guys involved. Now, look, if we go with the extreme scenario that Terry is out, they'll have to find other ways to move the ball, and maybe that's where you get more of these. You put your best players on the field, and maybe they think that's going with the 3 tight ends. But look, I think Sinnott has, he looks interesting. I think Colson Yankoff, who's an insane athlete, I think is interesting as well. I'm not ruling him out of having some kind of a role, but again, and by the way, they also have like Tyree Jackson, who was this quarterback at Buffalo, a 6'7" quarterback that converted in the league to tight end. He's bounced around. He made a couple of really nice catches today. He's massive. I mean, talk about red zone size. I was talking to your pal Chris Russell on the sideline. He was talking about Lawrence Cager, another deep tight end who's got a good size. I don't know that any of that matters, but my point is just unless Zach Ertz is out, I don't know how any of these guys are playing. So I think that's just the issue right now.
All right, we'll save Bill Krosky Merritt for the next conversation. Thanks, appreciate it.
Oh, I got his bus for Canton ready to go. Let's go.
I've seen you tweeting things out to that effect. Appreciate it, and I hope you're right.
We'll see.
Ben
Right,
Standig. Everybody, when we come back, Ben told us yesterday Von Miller's a really good interview. He's right. We're going to play some of what Von Miller said yesterday after camp when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So today, after practice, Quinn spoke before practice. After practice, it was Ertz and Daron Payne. And not a lot out of those two. We do have some Dan Quinn sound from before practice that we'll play before the end of the show. But Ben said to us yesterday on the show, he's like, Von Miller, he is a talker. So I went back and I listened to the Von Miller press avail after training camp practice yesterday. He's definitely an interesting dude. And he's smart and he's quick and he's thoughtful. Hopefully, he'll be a really good player on the field as well. But there were two sound bites that I wanted to play for you. They were both, I think they were both questions. They were asked by David Aldridge. This was the first one on why he picked Washington.
You've been intentional last few years about where you wanted to go and the places you wanted to go. What about this organization was compelling to you?
Yeah, it was extremely intentional coming here. You just can't leave Josh Allen and go anywhere, man. You know, you just can't go from, you know, the AFC Championship and just, you know, go anywhere. I feel, you know, whenever you get older too, losses, they like pile up. It seems like they just hit way harder than what they used to when you were young. And you know, this team is all about winning. You know, I'm all about winning. Whatever it takes to win, I'm gonna do. That's on and off the football field. It's nothing like winning. It's nothing like the locker room. It's nothing like, you know, coming in here and talking to you guys after a win. It's all good after a win. So that's why I'm here, is to win. And this team is all about winning. I'm all about winning, and it was a good marriage.
You know, that was one of the first questions asked to Von Miller. And I sat there and I listened to it, and I'm like, man, how amazing is it that the turnaround, the 1-year turnaround, because Dan selling the team obviously was the most significant event in recent sports history in this town, gave us a chance. But then after the season last year, you know, primarily because of Jaden Daniels, Von Miller, who had choices, he not only came here because of the quarterback, he came here because this franchise now is all about winning. What a change. Unbelievable change. When he said you just can't leave Josh Allen and go anywhere, he's saying you can't just leave in my position, getting ready to play my 15th NFL season, a 2-time Super Bowl winning player, didn't get to a Super Bowl in Buffalo, but got awfully close. And he picks here because you can't just go anywhere after playing on a team with Josh Allen. You have to go somewhere that has Josh Allen. And he's essentially saying, yeah, you got to go somewhere where you've got an elite quarterback, and Washington does in Jaden Daniels. And then to talk about how when you get older, losses pile up. They hit harder when you get older. So you got to focus on going to a team where it's all about winning. And he picks here. Man, have times changed. The next soundbite I picked out was him just talking about his role. I think it's another David Aldridge question. Go ahead and play it, Chris.
You hear from AP and Dan specifically about how they plan to use you and what they want you to do?
Yeah, they're going to let me rush. They going to let me rush. That's what I do. That's what I do. You know, I can still roll out the bed, you know, at 36 years old with my house shoes on and still rush the passer. You know, there's other stuff that I got to work at to get better at, of course. But the main thing for me is rushing the passer. I can do that right when I wake up, fresh out of sleep.
Yeah, he can do that. And, you know, I go back to the other day when Adam Peters said, in talking about Von Miller, he used the word shocked. I was shocked when I turned the tape on. And basically he said, and what I was watching was Von Miller, like Von Miller at his best. Look, he wasn't at his best in terms of overall impact because he has become a situational, specialized pass rusher. And that's what he became in Buffalo last year, especially after, you know, the ACL injury in 2023. But what Adam Peters said, every advanced number, and even turning on just the highlight reel from Von Miller from last year, says, and that is, in terms of talent, if he is what he was just last year, he'll be the best pass rusher on the team. Now, will that equate to the most sacks? No, but it'll make it easier for everybody else because you'll have to focus on him. Incredible get off, incredible pass rush efficiency. The win rate was really, really, you know, a solid number. And if you get Von Miller threatening defenses on 2nd and long, 3rd and long, final 2 minutes of a half, final 2 minutes of the game, and that's when he's going to be in there. You know, he said, they signed me to rush the passer. I can still do that in my house shoes after waking up. And, the contract that they gave him, $6.1 million for 1 year with another $4.4 million in incentives for a total of potentially $10.5 million. That's not nothing on a 1-year deal. So there are some expectations with him. This was the plan all along. The plan all along was, we know what we didn't get in the draft, but we've got a plan to add another pass rusher. And the plan was, I think, initially, we'll go after Myles Garrett if he's available. We'll look at Trey Hendrickson if Cincinnati drops the price. We're interested in DeMarcus Lawrence. We're interested in Joey Bosa. They signed elsewhere. And then you had, the Clownies and the Zadarius Smiths and the Matthew Judons and the Von Millers left. And Von Miller looked at this organization with probably multiple options and said, quarterback, and they're all about winning. And they're going to let me do what I do best, which is play 30 to 35% of the snaps and go get the quarterback on 3rd and long. He's going to wear 24. He talked about that. There was an answer, and I didn't cut this for you guys to listen to it. My apologies. But the answer about the jersey number was really mature. He said 58 was taken, 40 was taken. Just so you know, when we say taken, 40 is Tyler Owens, and 58 is Jordan McGee. It's not like those numbers. His NFL numbers were taken by Bobby Wagner and Marshawn Lattimore. They were two players that probably are going to be on the team. Okay, they're both going to make the team more likely than not. But, probably not a lot of money required to take it away. And he said, quote, 58 was taken, 40 was taken. I'm not the guy to come in here. It's not that serious, meaning to push to get one of those two numbers. I just want to win games. I'll put on whatever number you want me to. And then he said, not whatever number. He said, it's some numbers that I wouldn't put on, but 24, which is what he'll wear. He said, it just spoke to me. I've only worn 4 numbers my whole career, going back to high school or little league. 58 in Denver, 40 in LA, 40 in Buffalo. And I think he said he wore 5 when he was a kid. Can't wear 5 here. And he wore 24 in one game in college for a friend of his who was a teammate who was involved in an accident that paralyzed him from the neck down. His name was Corey Borner. But anyway, I love that answer because it's like there are a lot of guys, even at 36, whatever, they're going to come in and say, nah, I got to get my number. I'll pay for it, whatever. That doesn't matter to him. He's wearing 24. He was a big Champ Bailey fan, obviously played with Champ Bailey in Denver for many, many years. And he's a massive Kobe Bryant fan. So that number, he said, spoke to him, and it was available. It was available. Yeah, Von Miller going to be, if he plays, he's healthy, he's a factor. He'll be a go-to guy for everybody in media in this town. All right, when we come back, something Dan Quinn said today that I want you to hear about the 7th round running back, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, a.k.a. Bill. You'll hear it next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. So we are nearing the end of the first few days, first kind of work week of training camp. I think the first training camp practice open to the public. Chris, am I correct about that? It's Sunday. I think it's Sunday's practice.
I think that is the first, yeah.
Yeah, the 27th. So, and, they'll have New England team workouts and practices before their first preseason game. He actually talked about that, but I wanted to start with, look, there's a lot of hope. There's always a lot of hope this time of year for certain players that, fans fall in love with, media people fall in love with. And Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, their 7th round pick out of Arizona, really out of New Mexico, because that's the last time he played a full season. He played just one game in 2024 at Arizona. There seems to be a lot of optimism about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill. And the head coach was asked about him. Here's what he said.
Morning, Dan. We've talked about it. The running back room is deep. You got some players in that room, specifically Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. How does he jump out to you, and how does he fit into that room?
At that position, like I said, it's a hard one to evaluate in non-pads because you don't know if did the person make the tackle, did he break the tackle? And so it's offensive line, defensive line, and running backs are sometimes the hardest. But what you can evaluate is the explosion on the cut, the assignment, was the read correct? And having Anthony here is a really big deal, from a running back standpoint. He's got so much experience, can give the insight to the players to absolutely get them right. But I think it's the violence of the cuts, that he can get his shoulders square and get downhill fast. So I'm very excited to see, once we get into some opportunities where does he get tackled? Does he not? Does he run through some? So, but he's off to a really good start.
Some good insight from the coach. Like, we always talk about which are the positions that are really hard to evaluate without, watching them play in real games with a real game plan. He said offensive line, D-line, and running backs. And you get the running back thing because if they're not getting tackled, that's yards after contact. And you're looking for, the vision, but it's all on tape heading into it, the vision, which was there, and the ability to be that, cut guy. In fact, I think he looked more like a zone runner at the college level. But yeah, there's some talent there. There's no doubt. You go back and watch some of those highlights from New Mexico in 2023, and you wonder about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, if he had actually played an entire season last year in the Big 12 for Arizona, rather than one game before they ruled him ineligible because of apparently something that was pretty bogus in the way that he had gotten to New Mexico. But perhaps he wouldn't have been a 7th rounder. Recency bias. If he had gone for 1,200 yards for Arizona and been a big-time factor in the Big 12, maybe he's a 4th or a 5th rounder. That's possible. And there's historically a big difference between 4th and 5th round running backs versus 7th round running backs. You know what? Running back is one of those things you can see a little bit of in preseason. You see the vision. There was a guy that they just released a few days ago prior to camp that they kept for the last 12 months, more than that, I guess. Michael Wiley, who was an Arizona running back, right? I think he was. And he really showed something in terms of his vision and quick cut ability in some of those preseason games that he got into. And I think they liked him, but they just didn't feel probably as good about him as they did with what they had, because he ended up being on the practice squad. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see on, Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill. That's his nickname. I think that's what we'll end up calling him. This was Quinn talking about what he wants to see early when they get to those intra-squad practices with the Patriots.
You talked a little bit yesterday about really looking at some of the players that just came here, Goldman and Kinlaw and all those games, as far as how they're mashing in the early stages of camp in getting ready for the Patriots and the Ravens inter-squad scrimmage. Early on, what is it that you want to see from this team as a whole?
understanding one another. I want to hear the communication. That's what I want to see at practice. So they have a rock solid understanding of a technique. For people that have had lots of experience, okay, I've done it this way, but this is how we'll do it here. That's a big piece of it. The next piece is their ability to, us as a staff, find the unique things they can do and then draw it out of them. And so us as a staff getting to learn who the player is, what their strengths are, that's also part of the next month.
Yeah. He didn't necessarily address specifically that thing. But by the way, it's just one practice. It's on Wednesday, August 6th against the Patriots at Gillette Stadium before their Friday night first preseason game on August 8th in Foxborough. Coaches have said over the years that those joint practices are more valuable than the preseason game. And the reason is you can go starters against starters. You don't have to worry about when they're pulling theirs out and you're pulling your. I mean, it's a joint practice. So we want your starters on defense against our starters on offense, and we can run a lot more plays and get a lot more work than we would in one series in a preseason game. So those tend to be much more valuable in coaches' abilities to evaluate players. So we'll see when we get there. We're still, 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away. 2 weeks from tonight, the first preseason game. All right, there was other things Quinn said, but nothing overly consequential. And who knows? Maybe we'll get something over the weekend. By the way, I'm on vacation next week. I'm heading out. Denton will be in for me, I think, for a lot of it. But I will certainly be back well in advance of their first preseason game for that entire week leading into the first preseason game against New England. Thanks to Chris, who did a good job this week in for Max. Thanks to Ben. Thanks to Buzz Williams. Chris Russell is next.